Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I'm your host, Mark Gabberty, the content marketing expert, bringing you 5 new episodes every week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. Hello, Breakthrough Success listeners. I just wanted you all to know before the episode actually starts, I've been working a little bit behind the scenes to give you something really special. So a while ago, I wrote my book, Content Marketing Secrets, which helps people create, promote, and optimize their content for growth and revenue. And I just put the finishing touches together to offer that for free to anyone who is interested. So if you want your free copy of Content Marketing Secrets, all you have to do is head over to markgabberty.com/book. Now, let's jump right into the episode. If you want to achieve a breakthrough in any goal that you pursue, especially when it comes to growing a successful business, you need to have a business plan behind your efforts. And most business plans, they typically give you an idea of where you need to go and what you need to do in order to achieve success. But how do we go about developing business plans and tweaking them so they get us to where we need to go? That is what we are going to discuss in this episode. Today's guest has over 34 years of diverse business experience through successful careers in various fields and in the businesses that he has started. He co-founded the Levante Business Group, which supports entrepreneurs and small business owners. In addition to that group, he is also the co-owner of iTopIt, which is a self-serve frozen desserts restaurant in Colorado Springs. He is also the co-owner of Wild Blue Car Wash, another Colorado-based company, and the co-founder of L3 Destinations, a travel agency which he co-founded with his wife. When he is not working on his various businesses, he is also co-hosting the How of Business podcast, which you could all find at thehowofbusiness.com. Today's guest for episode 197 of the Breakthrough Success podcast is none other than Henry Lopez. Henry, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Mark, I'm excited to be here. That introduction and your enthusiasm makes me even more enthusiastic to be here. So thanks for having me on the show.
Henry, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm really looking forward to diving into this because we could be motivated, we can have the right mindset, but if we don't have the plan, we don't really know where our action is leading. So I really do look forward to talking about the how we can develop our business plans, but I'd love to get some background first. So can you just share with us why exactly did you start helping people to start, run, and grow their small businesses? What got you into that?
Well, I've always enjoyed teaching and helping others and mentoring. I love talking about business. So, my wife will tell me that she gets enough of it, right? So I can talk all day about business. I love talking with other either existing business owners or aspiring entrepreneurs because it just motivates me. I love the topic. It really is my hobby. So when I get to share with others and help others, not only do I get that immediate feedback and, of course, the gratification of seeing somebody be successful, but I just love the topic. I love talking about it. So I think that's the primary reason why I enjoy coaching others.
And that is also a topic we enjoy talking about here on Breakthrough Success. And like with business, if you want to be able to be successful, you do need to have the business plan. I think that's something that we should be talking about a lot, obviously not just in this episode, but in general, like after this episode, just think about your business plan, keep talking about it, keep doing it. But before we start with our business plans, I'm wondering what exactly makes an effective business plan?
That's a good question. I think, Mark, what I'd like to do is step back maybe and break it down from this perspective, because this is the way I always look at it, either when I'm creating one for myself or I'm helping a client create one. The first thing I look at is who is the audience for this business plan. And of course, always at a minimum, you have the audience of yourself and or your business partners. So, and often that's really all we should be worried about, is we are writing this for ourselves to give us a blueprint, a guideline, a framework, and also to test whether it's a go, no go on the idea. But then sometimes we also have to develop plans that we need to present to external constituents like a banker or a formal investor or a partner. And so that's where I start. But first and foremost, before we even get there, I think the business plan needs to be written for ourselves to start to put together all of these ideas, all of these things that we have researched. And to me, just to get ahead a little bit, the key component of a business plan for me are the financial projections or the financial pro forma, because that's what's going to help me determine, is this an idea that I can make money at?
And I like how you mentioned financial projections in the plan, because you want to obviously take action and plan how you're going to take action, but you want to have a main goal that you're trying to achieve, like the financial goal, and everything else is just helping you to achieve that goal. And with the financial goals, I'm wondering, how far do you branch out, and like how exactly do you plan out the numbers? Like, how do you make predictions and goals for your finances?
So do you mean, Mark, like how many years do I look out, or how do I put the numbers together, or both?
Both.
So as far as how far out I go, I like to go out anywhere between 5 to 7 years. Most banks, in my experience, are going to want to see about 3 years. And certainly, for people who are listening, there is the fact that these are all just projections, right? So the farther out you go, the fuzzier it is, because it's just impossible to really have a crystal ball as to what's going to happen. But the reason I like to go out at least 5 years is one of my rules of thumb as to whether I move forward on a business idea or not, or whether I think it's a good business idea, is how quickly will I make back my cash investment? And unless I project out enough years, I don't know what that is. For me, the rule of thumb is I want to make my cash in. I want to get that back out of the business between 3 to 5 years. And of course, it always depends. And that's just a general rule of thumb. So that dictates that I need to project out about 5 years so I can see where I fall on that measure. Now, putting the numbers together can be difficult. A lot of it depends on whether this is something that someone else is already doing, and therefore I can gather that information from the marketplace. If I'm inventing something new that's never been sold before, that makes it a heck of a lot harder, right? Because I have nothing to base it on. I have nothing to validate it against. But let's take, for example, the frozen yogurt restaurant that I have. That was an existing concept, right? We didn't invent self-serve frozen yogurt. And so we were able to analyze the industry, collect data, research existing locations. We were able to look at the ice cream business, which is related, and gather data there. We were able to look at competitors in other markets and see what they were charging, because that's a key component to what we thought then we would be able to sell our product for. We estimated then on how many people we thought would come through our shop on a daily basis and on a monthly basis. And that's how you begin to put the numbers together. I do think, though, Mark, that one of the big mistakes that we can easily make, and I see this often, and I've made it myself, is we overestimate, number one, how much revenue or how much we can sell something for. Number two, we overestimate how quickly we will get to break even, which is the point in time at which you're starting to bring in more income than you have expenses, right? And the key component there is that working capital then that I'm going to account for in my projections to get me through that ramp up time. That is what I see as one of the biggest mistakes that first-time business owners make, is they underestimate that. They overestimate how quickly they're going to start turning a profit, and then the dreaded thing of running out of cash happens. So long-winded answer, but I look at about 3 to 5 years, and I start to collect all of those data points, hopefully in an industry where there are others that are doing something like it or similar, and that's how I get started. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it does make a lot of sense how people overestimate how much money they plan on making and the break-even point, because I guess like a lot of people, obviously they want to create a plan, make as much money as possible, put a really big number on it, but I do see how people could overestimate that. And one of the things that we should also do with a plan is to, you can correct me on this or let me know, but I think we should overestimate the amount of work we should be putting into the plan, because if we do that, then worst case scenario, we still get the job done.
Agreed. Yeah, I would agree with you, Mark. The other thing that I like to do, and I was taught this some time ago, is to stress test a plan. In other words, once you've got a good version of your financial performance, which really it's a P&L, a profit and loss statement that goes out multiple years. That's what you're creating primarily. And then separately, you're going to have startup costs. But the key thing that you work on when you're planning is that profit and loss, rather, that P&L statement that you're projecting forward. What I like to do then, once I've got a good version of it, is then and that's the nice thing about using Excel, I copy that tab to another tab, and then I adjust everything down 10%, 20%, 25%. I stress test it to see, what if a recession hits in the first summer of my operations, or something else happens? What would happen to my business financially? So you want to stress test your model. You want to end up ideally with an ideal model, a worst case, and a best case to give you some sanity check on the numbers.
And it's interesting how you also mentioned a best case scenario, because I feel like a lot of people, like, worst case scenario gets thrown around a lot, and it is good to be prepared for the worst. But that best case scenario also gives you an idea of the potential for the business model. And one of the things you mentioned earlier was that, the reason I asked a question about the finances, you mentioned the numbers can get a little fuzzy as you go a little further out, like how exactly you're going to hit your financial goals like 5 years from now, and so many things are going to change from where you are now to that 5th year. So with that in mind, I know that plans need some updating, but how often do you recommend updating a business plan?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I've been guilty sometimes of not going back to my original plan. What it turns into, which really then becomes the plan, Mark, is our operating budgets or our operating plan. So I like to do forward yearly planning, and I like to get that done at the beginning of the year. So as quickly as possible, we keep pretty good track of our financials. We use QuickBooks and we're on top of it. So it's not like at the end of the year it's taking us months to figure out what happened the previous year. So we'll close out the year pretty quickly, look back at what happened, compare it to previous periods if we have that data. And then I like to project at the beginning of the year, what are we saying we're going to do this year? So that's my approach primarily to updating the business plan. And then the other things I'll update are components of it, like the marketing plan part of it. So that definitely is a living component of it that lives on kind of on its own and gets updated for, like, what are the marketing tactics that we're going to execute on this year, and what are the budgets? Well, one thing that I learned, and I think I picked it up in a book actually, on the whole concept of projecting for the next year, is to start with the profit goal that you have. And of course, it's got to be realistic, right? If last year I had profit margin of 10%, it's not realistic to say, well, this year we're going to do 50%, right? That's just not going to happen. But whatever my realistic profit margin is for this year, I start with that, and then I work backwards, meaning that then my expenses have to fit into that. Is that making sense? Because then that dictates the budgets that I can allocate to other things that are variable, like marketing. So that's how I keep the plan living, if you will, is by working on projections for the upcoming year, looking at the historical data to see how we performed, and then keeping things like the marketing plan component of it live and updated.
And I really like how you talked about how you keep up with the plan, because sometimes people will write a plan, they'll ditch it in a few days. In some cases, they may think the plan is too hard. In other cases, it's just we naturally forget about it. It's not in front of us. And if you want to keep up with a business plan, one of the best things you do is just put that plan in front of you so you see it every day. But in addition to doing something like keeping the plan in front of you, how do you recommend we keep ourselves accountable so we're continuing to do the work for the plan a few months into it and years into it, instead of a few days and then on to the next plan?
Right. Yeah, no, good question. And I think your point of keeping it in front of you is important. But I think, Mark, the biggest thing that happens, we touched on this at the outset, is we end up writing these fluffy, verbose plans for somebody else. Like we think we're having to, like it's a writing exercise for someone else. And I think that's where the mistake often lies. Now, again, sometimes we do have an external audience like a lender or an investor, but even those people, I can assure you, they're skimming it and then they're getting down to the numbers, right? So I think the biggest mistake is to write this long, elaborate, wordy plan that nobody, including yourself, is ever going to look at. And then to your point, instead, I've started to do more what I call a pitch deck kind of design where it's bullet pointed and has my key initiatives and objectives so that then, just like you said, I could put that up on a bulletin board or I can have that up on my screen or whatever way it's going to be effective for me so that I use it as a guide, as a real blueprint for myself instead of something that just gathers dust on the shelf.
And it is interesting how you mentioned about the writing component. I mean, we are like increasingly busy, so there are going to be a lot more people who skim through content to just find the nitty gritty of what we're looking for. It's why blog posts have big headlines, bold font, and things like that. But you're seeing it everywhere where brands are optimizing for the fact that we are skimmers. And when it comes to your plans, just using that simple framework Henry provided you can make it easier for you to create the plan and just see all of the important information so it's easier for you to take action.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Mark. And furthermore, what I see it's often what paralyzes people to create a business plan because they think they have to write a novel. And so if you just let go of that and forget about how somebody else might read it and use it as what it should be initially, at least, which is a guide for yourself. And again, to help you get to, in the planning phase, those go, no-go decisions. We get an idea, we vet it, and the business plan helps us vet that idea, in particular, and most importantly, the numbers. And then it helps us decide, does this still make sense? Or do I need to change the business model? Or maybe I need to go for a completely different idea or a completely different business. So forget about writing it for somebody else and instead write it for yourself, and you're going to get a lot more done a lot faster, and you won't get paralyzed with the writing part of it.
And I do see some people getting paralyzed with the writing part, as you mentioned. And let's say that someone has finished writing the plan, but I feel like some people also get paralyzed when they have the plan in front of them. And I'm wondering, how can we avoid that feeling? How can we avoid feeling like we're held back and we're not living up to the full potential of implementing our plan?
Yeah, that's a big question, Mark. And I think what you're asking about there, which we all experience, is you get overwhelmed now by everything that has to be done or executed on. And so what I do there is I try to then break it down into smaller components that I can execute on. And so I get now then so I've laid out a plan, I've validated it, seems like it all makes sense. I've gotten input, hopefully, from others, partners, mentors, coaches. Now what I got to do is start heads down, executing tactically. And sometimes we do have to bring ourselves heads down, because if we look at everything that has to get done, either to get the business launched or to continue building the business, you can get paralyzed because you get overwhelmed. I find myself doing that sometimes, where I have so much to do some days that I don't know where to start. So you got to make yourself a list, and those are those tactical steps. And all you have to do is ask yourself the question every day or every week: am I making progress toward my goal that I set out in this plan? Did I make progress? Did I learn something? Did I accomplish something? Did I uncover something? Did I complete this piece of research? Whatever it is, just make myself a very attainable to-do list for the day, that then at the end of the day, I feel like I've made progress. And I think that's how we continue to move forward and not get paralyzed.
And that theme of daily progress is going to help a lot of people. I mean, even if you look at something really small that you did, just acknowledge the fact that you did it. Some days are better than others, obviously, but take some time to acknowledge all the progress you make and just strive to make as much progress as possible. But even as we are making progress in setting creating our business plans, there are just going to be certain challenges that come our way, and everyone has experienced a bunch of challenges in their lives and had to overcome them to reach where they are today. So, with that in mind, Henry, I'm wondering if you could share with us one big challenge you faced in your journey and a powerful lesson you learned during that challenge.
Oh gosh, Mark, I've had so many challenges. Most recently, probably with developing a new software solution that we've just brought to market for the car wash industry. Is one of the businesses that I'm in is the car wash industry. We just opened a new car wash location a few months ago, and also just launched a software system. The big challenge I have that I often fail at is I've got so many things going on that I lose concentration and focus, and I end up not getting much done very well. And this is something that I've learned how to get better at from podcasts, from books, from others, from mentors, and that is with time blocking. But what I find myself doing, what I had found myself doing, is just kind of shuffling paper and working on the noisy tasks and really not moving anything forward very much because I was so quote unquote busy. And so what I've done to really help me with that is done a lot more time blocking so that I have concentrated blocks of time where I'm working on something. Therefore, I can really produce something of quality, whether I'm writing something or designing something or planning for something or creating content. You're very familiar with that. I've found that approach really has helped tremendously. So I don't know if I answered your question specifically, but that is one of the biggest challenges that I've had most recently, is just balancing everything that I've worked on, right?
And that's a challenge that I feel like everyone continues to have. And just doing things like creating systems, time blocking, as Henry said, is a very powerful way to balance everything. But we do have this sense of balance that we have to achieve. And that's something that we should continue to think about, like, how are we going to balance everything? What are we going to prioritize? These are things that we should just keep thinking about as we move forward with our business plans.
Yeah. But a lot of it, Mark, as you're doing now, a lot of it is how much are you willing to sacrifice? And I think that's one of the key things to becoming a successful small business owner is you have to be willing to make some sacrifices. And I think a lot of people often, they think they want to become their own boss, but they're not willing to make the sacrifices.
Yeah, that's something really deep as well. I mean, they're like saying yes to something means saying no to something. Then we have opportunity costs. So they're like a bunch of sacrifices that are to be made on the road to success. And part of the road to success is learning about your niche and getting as much knowledge as possible. And with that in mind, Henry, I'm wondering if you could share with us 3 books that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
Oh, gosh, I wasn't prepared for that one, but it's not a problem because I read all the time, not as much as you do. I'd like to be able to read as much as you do, but I'm reaching over because, give me just a moment. There's one book that I'm grabbing off my desk that I just recently read, and I'm trying to get Charles Duhigg to hopefully come on my show. It's called The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. And I have loved this book. I love the way it's written. I love the way it's broken up into very consumable small chapters because I read multiple books at the same time. So that's one of my most recent that I really love. Another one that I just finished that I'm also grabbing for on the other side of my desk is .com Secrets by Russell Brunson. So as you might know him, he's the guy behind ClickFunnels. And this book is great on learning how to create sales funnels online. So I just finished that on the flight back from Europe last week. That's a great one. And then one that I keep on my desk by Stephen Pressfield. He's well known for having authored The War of Art, which is a great book. But this book is called Do the Work. And it's a short little read. It's kind of one of those books that you read recurringly. You read it again and again. And it's just about this concept of facing resistance that keeps us from doing the work. So those are three books that are on my desk that are most recent that I would recommend.
Henry, thank you for sharing with us those great book recommendations. Those will all be in the show notes, markberry.com/E197. And if you guys want a book that will help you create, promote, and optimize your content for growth and revenue, you can grab my book, Content Marketing Secrets, over at markberry.com/book. And before we wrap up this episode, Henry, I've asked you several questions throughout our time together, but what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
As it relates to business or life or both?
Whichever one you prefer.
Mm-hmm. As it relates to business and related to life, I think what I try to ask myself is every day, and we talked about this a little bit already, have I moved forward towards what I want to achieve, both in business and in life? What I did today, did it move me in that direction? And every day the answer isn't yes, like you talked about as well, right? Some days we just don't make any progress, or we get sidetracked or whatever. But I think that's the biggest question I certainly ask myself is, did I make progress today? Am I on the right path? And did I make progress today to where I want to go?
Henry, thank you for sharing with us that great question, all of your great insights throughout our time together. If you guys want to learn more about Henry, all these things I mentioned will be in the show notes, but go to the howofbusiness.com. That is where you will find him and his podcast by the same name, The How of Business. And that is a show for all aspiring entrepreneurs and existing small business owners who want to learn how they can grow their businesses. Henry, I can't thank you enough for sharing all of your great insights with us today. It was such a pleasure to have you on Breakthrough Success.
Thank you, Mark. Great pleasure being on your show.
How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn